I think routine is crucial in any structure or a plan. So I was committed to, this is, going back to having two little kids under the age of 3. I talked to my wife, and Amanda was very supportive. When I told her, I'm like, I want to sign up for a marathon, 2022. And, but I didn't want to leave her, I don't want to leave her hanging because I go to work for 8 hours. I come back and I want to cherish that time with them. So I'm like, here, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to do most of my training before you guys wake up. And right then,
for me personally, since I'm running every day, I know my heart rate. Basically, when I get in, I check it. I'm within 5 beats per minute, looking at my pace and then checking my watch. Like this morning, I had I did a hill training, but I came in still under 10 minutes with hill training and some walking. And I'm like, I bet you I'm in the 135. And I came in at 131. So you're learning your body and not looking at your watch, setting it just so you know the parameters, but you're trying to be efficient. Your body's a machine. The more efficient your body runs, the higher, let's say, octane that fuel you'll have in your system for the reserves to run longer. Let's say it. You'll be more efficient as a runner long term. Welcome to the John Grdina classroom, where I have an opportunity to share wisdom from my experiences and those of each guest who I have on this show. The 4 pillars holding the foundation of this classroom together are my faith, family, fitness, and freedom. You will find many great resources on this podcast, which includes prayers, testimonies, my 40 Days of Deliverance program, my book, Freedom to Ascend, and specific strategies to live a fulfilled life. To be a part of my classroom or would like more information behind who I am, simply go to johnGrdina.com. I also have limited coaching spots as well on my website. If you're interested in the investment of becoming the best version of your present self. I hope you enjoy this episode, and if something stood out, like it, share it, or make a comment on social media. Remember, we only get one shot in this life. Therefore, exhaust your gifts now. Welcome to the John Grdina classroom. This is a special time with my brother James, who just currently ran his first marathon a couple weeks ago. He hails from Las Vegas for a work trip, so I thought I'd catch him while he's not pulling father duty with his 2 children. So today's lesson is going to be about how to train for a marathon, how to conquer your goal, and how to compete at a high level based on research data and nutrition. So James, why don't you just talk a little bit about yourself, and we'll kind of go backwards when we used to run together, when you lived close to me, up until your marathon, and then what you want to do after this last challenge you just accomplished. So go ahead, the floor is yours.
Yeah. My name is James. Obviously John's brother. So I am happily married to a beautiful wife, Amanda, and I have 2 children, my daughter Vera and my son Vincent. Couldn't be happier. As of right now, I love my life. It's really good, and conquering this goal that's been on my mind to do for a long time now, it feels really good. I'm not gonna lie. So I will go back. What started it is the catalyst. It was like around 2010-ish era, and you actually wrote about this in your book during a certain time too, where I just looked at myself, and you were referring to, stepping on the scale, and I'm just like, what are you doing? You got to do something different here, because I was overweight. I didn't like the way I looked. I didn't like the way I ate. I didn't like the way I felt. So I'm like, something's got to change. And I ended up signing up for my first half marathon at Fairport Harbor, which was, the town over from where we grew up in Perry. So that kind of started the whole my running kick, at least. And from from then until now, I've probably ran about 6 half marathons. We did a couple 5Ks here and there. I think we did a 10K in there, that wine run. And then we did the other Dirty Race Series 10K last November, which I think that right there was the other catalyst that motivate, motivated me to want to actually run again. Because as soon as 2022 hit, I'm like, this is the year. I'm running a marathon this year. So that's kind of how it all got started back up again.
So, just so to preface everything, James has two little children. They're very young, under the ages of 3, and it's sleepless nights sometimes, waking up multiple times a night for his son Vincent, and it's not easy. And the thing that James recognized was that he planted, like I said, planted the flag in the ground that he was committed to running this marathon. And we've always dialogued throughout the process of him running ever since 2010. And in my book, I do talk about the awakening and how I had to conquer my mindset of fear to doing big things. And we'll go into, James, more of your training and how that helped you build confidence with your daily consistency of running. So let's walk right up until you decided you were going to sign up for the marathon. What things were going through your head early in the year? So you signed up in the spring of this year, right? 2022.
Yes. So basically, yeah. I decided before that I was going to run it. And in my head, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start telling people that I'm going to do it. And it was just a way to make me accountable. So, but it didn't hit me until I actually signed up for it. And I'm like, all right, just like anything, let's get a plan going. And obviously there were, you know, physically, I knew I could do it. It's always the mental part. And I'll go back to when I ran the half marathon in Pittsburgh. I trained for it. I thought I did a good job training for it. I was on a strict schedule, not diet wise, but getting my miles in per week, and it absolutely destroyed me. And I remember when I was coming up on mile 11, and they had the split. And usually they'll have a split where the marathoners go versus the half marathons go. And I'm just thinking to myself in my head, I'm like, how could anyone do that? How can I go left? I can't wait to go right and finish 2 miles. I can barely finish it. And right then and there, I'm like, it's a mindset. Physically, I know I could do it, but it was in my mind that it was so difficult and it was a huge mountain to climb. So that was always in the back of my head and what I was thinking.
So that goes, and I had the same thing. And I'm not here to talk about my past of what I learned, but to only conquer fear, you actually have to put it on the map of your goal. And even if you failed it, you still were chasing that goal. So when you signed up for your first marathon this year, you had the doubts, I think I could finish it based on doing the right training. So let's talk about your training. What did you think you did right to get you prepared to finish your marathon right under 4 hours?
Um, a lot of it was my commitment to my routine. Um, I think routine is crucial in any structure or a plan. So I was committed to, this is, going back to having two little kids under the age of 3. I talked to my wife, and Amanda was very supportive. When I told her, I'm like, I want to sign up for a marathon, 2022. And, but I didn't want to leave her, I don't want to leave her hanging because I go to work for 8 hours. I come back and I want to cherish that time with them. So I'm like, here, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to do most of my training before you guys wake up. And right then and there, I'm like, okay, that's set in stone. So most of my time, like, I was getting up in the 4 o'clock hour almost every day. I would run typically 4 times a week with some other cardio training in there. And I stuck to it. I think I missed one day out of that whole training series. And it was a 16-week training program, but I started at week 13. That's what it was.
Was that 12 weeks, James? 12 or 16? Okay, that's right. Yeah. So, whose program did you use? If I remember correctly, you did a blend program.
Yeah, yeah. So this was yeah, I know me and you were talking about it, and I'm trying to come up with a plan with you as well. And we chose Hal Higdon's Novice 2 for their marathon training program. And that basically laid out, your mileage every day for that week through, for that 16 weeks or whatever, or my 13 weeks. And then I also incorporated into that was Nick Bare's training program. And those of you who don't know Nick Bare, he's a CEO, entrepreneur, ex-military of BPN. Great guy. I love his content and everything he stands for because he does it right. Just, he's a great guy. He has a ton of content on YouTube and his podcast. You can find it on Spotify or YouTube itself. So, but he had stuff in his plan where he incorporated his speed runs. So I would throw in there interval training and tempo runs, or the there's he called it threshold runs, and it's basically you're pushing your body a little faster than you wanted to for your marathon pace. And I was shooting for a 9-minute pace on those threshold runs. Say you're running 8 miles that day. You would start out with a 2-mile warm up and go 4 miles at an 8:30 pace, or just a little faster than your marathon pace that you wanted to introduce that speed and that effort level that you should be at. And then I also did the interval training, which was, it reminds me of like circuit training, what we did in like high school, where you would, go really hard, almost to a sprint for 400 meters or 800 meters, and then walk for about 2 minutes. And then you would repeat that. You would repeat it 4 times or 8 times, whatever it called for on that day. But I loved it because it was a change of pace from same old running, same pace every day. It just changed it up. It was kind of nice. So I look forward to it. And I usually did that once a week. And then that would, going after, what you preach all the time is maffetone training, which I do want to get into as well, is the lower heart rate. If you wanted to jump into that.
Yeah, talk about how important that is. Well, anyone who knows me, I'm a mad researcher, and I have a lot of time in the car, so I just crush YouTube videos and also podcasts. And I came around Phil Maffetone's method of heart rate training probably like 3 years ago, and I learned that if you run slower, you actually run faster. And I always equate heart rate training to like the RPMs of a vehicle. So if you're running your vehicle at a lower RPM, it's going to last longer. Everything's just going to run smoother. You're not going to redline it. Where I think coming out of the gate with most runners, and we did this, James, when we first started running, was I have to run every run at my race pace. And our heart rate was probably in the 160s, and we're just burning our bodies. We can't recover as fast. And as a result, you feel burned out. You feel like you're tired when you're running. You don't have, so learning Phil Maffetone's method is 80% of your runs should be in a low heart rate. So what does that mean? If I'm 40, so it works really clean math. Usually 180 is your max heart rate. Not everybody, but mine is around there. So you just subtract your age. So your ceiling of your runs should be below 140 beats per minute on average. And for me personally, since I'm running every day, I know my heart rate. Basically, when I get in, I check it. I'm within 5 beats per minute, looking at my pace and then checking my watch. Like this morning, I had I did a hill training, but I came in still under 10 minutes with hill training and some walking. And I'm like, I bet you I'm in the 135. And I came in at 131. So you're learning your body and not looking at your watch, setting it just so you know the parameters, but you're trying to be efficient. Your body's a machine. The more efficient your body runs, the higher, let's say, octane that fuel you'll have in your system for the reserves to run longer. Let's say it. You'll be more efficient as a runner long term. So go ahead, talk about how that worked for you.
And that's exactly, yeah, that's exactly what this program does. And it literally allows your body to consume oxygen at a high level. Like when I first started doing this, I couldn't keep my heart rate. And I'm talking, I am doing the easiest runs, and I couldn't keep my heart rate under 140. And I'm just like, what is going on here? This is crazy. And it was like they were 12-minute miles. It was like just shy of walking. And it's not like I haven't taken that much time off of running. I just didn't know. I guess I never really focused on heart rate at that time. You're like what me and you were talking about. Yeah, when I went out to run, it was a run that was kind of in that gray zone. You're not really pushing too hard, where you're working on strength and speed, and building your lungs for that. But you're not really low enough where you can recover and work on your aerobic base. So that was a huge, huge part and aspect of my training during this whole time. And trust me, by the end, I think I got my easy runs, my heart rate in they were probably high 130s, and I was doing just under 10-minute miles, and that was 13 weeks. So right there alone shows you that it does work. It does build your aerobic.
Yeah. And I want everyone to, go ahead. I guess I want everyone to listen to what you said, James. He trained for 13 weeks. Before that, we have to preface this again. You really didn't run for 6 months, really. You really weren't training at all. You weren't really running at all before that. In March, you ran like 18 miles with me out of the blue for my 40th birthday run. And then you had a couple months off, and then you started your training. So I want people to understand, if you're consistent with the right training, you will perform well. It's just the consistency of doing the right things. And heart rate training is the number one thing you have to do, whether you start running, you've been doing it for a couple of years. It's an all the time thing. So let's talk about your marathon itself, the day, and let's talk about nutrition, because you talked about recently about that, of how you think your nutrition failed at the end. So let's just talk about what you brought with you and kind of give a visual for all the listeners.
Well, you know baselines at that point. You know what you're capable of. And what I noticed during my run is I can go a hell of a lot further, like without getting tired or exhausted. It was crazy. I was waiting for that wall to come hit me, and I guess it did. I think it was more or less I wasn't fueling my body properly toward the end of the race, which I should have. But it was my muscles failing at that point. I ran basically 23 miles, and I just felt strong. Everything felt strong. So it was a great experience, and
100%. Yeah, I mean, like James, what you said about the fuel, and I talked to you about that is like I always like the movie Back to the Future where they're putting the logs and it's going faster in the train. And people have to understand if you're not putting fuel, if you're not putting that logs on the fire while you're burning it to use your engine of your body running, then your train's gonna crash. And then you hit the wall. I've been there before. It sucks. You don't want to get there, and you don't wait until the wall hits. You preload, put those logs in, which is basically your carbohydrates and electrolytes, which then will sustain you through the run. And if you train properly, you'll finish the race. It's just how much you're going to output with, you know, of effort towards the middle or end of the run. So keep going. Yeah, it's good.
right, yeah. I mean, I'll talk about my fuel, and then I'll kind of break down the race right afterwards and that whole day and that experience. So before, and huge learning curve once again, I did not properly know what your body needed for this. I have done half marathons where I didn't even grab a cup of water. And I'm just like, it's foolish and dumb. You're just, because you got to think about what you're doing to your body. You're exhausting it, you're pushing it beyond the limits. And now you're going to starve it. And I like your analogy too. It's like you have a smoldering fire, and if you put nothing into that fire is going to go out. You have to keep inserting logs into that fire. So this is what me and you have talked about, and what worked for you as far as fuel goes. And you know, electrolytes. There's two kinds of electrolytes that I typically consumed. Was the Tailwind, which is the powder form. Mix it in your drink. That stuff was amazing. That hands down. You know, I like that stuff because it wasn't a gut bomb. It didn't really hurt you. Some of the other sports drinks, I cannot do Gatorade. Um, I know they pass it out on race days, but there's too much sugar, or it doesn't jive well with me. This stuff was a clean burn. Um, Salt tabs as well. Another form of electrolyte that I never used before, but I didn't realize how important it was because you're losing all of your nutrients when you run. You're depleting them. So this is a way to, you're not going to eat like a full course meal. You're not going to gain all this stuff back, but it's a way where you don't tamper out too quickly. Yeah, and I've hit those walls too on half marathons. I've hit walls, and it's because I mean I didn't know any better. I didn't know what my body needed at that time, and the other things that I needed, just simple sugars. I usually carried on long runs. Rice Krispie treats. Those things were delicious. And Mike and Ike's go a lot. Yeah, Mike and Ike's go a long way.
That's Billy Yang. Yeah, Billy Yang, PJ Carmergo. Come on, that's the Mike and Ike's.
Hmm. Oh, PJ, yeah. Honey stingers, and I prefer those other than like the goo gel packs. Honey stingers is basically pure honey with two other ingredients in it, and it was just a way to get pure simple sugar and that quick caloric intake that your body needed for that. So I usually carried those on me as well. Another thing, caffeine. I didn't realize was a beautiful thing in the running world. So Run Gum, which you also introduced to me, which it was it was a nice pick me up whenever you needed. So that definitely helped. And between the combination of all of those, and I'm just like thinking, I'm like, wow, you really need to eat and drink and do all this stuff? Absolutely. Yes. To sustain that level of effort, for you not to get tired, for you not to break down, yes, absolutely. I would recommend all those things. So that was basically like the feel that I took throughout my training. And then if you want, I mean, I can go through just the day of the marathon and that whole experience. And
Yeah, let's talk about that's very important because being a one percenter, and I talk in my book in chapter 12, I had three people in there. And the point is this that you don't want to live an average life. So, one thing I learned from Bree Hagen is that once you run a marathon, you instantly become a one percenter. So, this was James' day to become a one percenter a couple weeks ago. So, tell the story of how, we all went down and, celebrated, supported you and meeting your goal, which was to run a marathon under 4 hours. So, it's all you, James.
so, I mean, I'll go and we'll start the night before because I already had planned out my dinner and what I wanted. And it was actually a recipe from Nick Bear and his wife Stephanie on their app that they have, and it was a Hawaiian chicken and rice. It was a good protein, high carb, clean. Just it was a clean meal, and I was just craving it. So that's what I knew. I had a good meal before going to bed, and I actually got some good sleep that night. And because I knew I was waking up at 4, and like I do, even on every routine run, I lay out all my stuff. That's what I do. I lay it out so I know it's ready. I don't have to think about it because if there's any doubt when you wake up in the morning, even on your normal routine runs, like, oh, I got to find my clothes, it's another reason for you to stay in bed. So I figured out real quick, I'm like, just lay it all out. You get everything ready, will leave you less chance of failing. So it's a simple, it takes 5 minutes, and that's what I did. So I had everything ready that morning. I woke up at 4 because my dad was picking me up. Our dad, he was picking us up at 5:15 at my house. So at that time, I usually drank water right off the bat, made a bagel with peanut butter on it and bananas. Peanut butter, honey, and bananas. Awesome. I I I loved it. I was hoping to, you know, do my business before I left that day too. If you're catching my drift, and it was, yeah, it's a good feeling. I'll tell you that. I did. So yeah, it was two thumbs up. So and then Dad picks me up at 5:15. We head out and rendezvous with you. I think we picked you up at 5:45, and then we all started heading down to Akron. And yeah, we got there a little after 6. I think it took us a half an hour to get down there. And then we all got out of the car. It was still pitch black out. I got suited up, made sure my water was adjusted and my vest. I had all my supplements on me. And then we all kind of just walked toward the starting line. And at that point, you know, it's a combination of nerves, excitement. You put in the work, you put in the time. You're ready to do this. So I think I went to the bathroom. I peed one time right before then, and I was ready to go. And it was fast. Like I felt like I was only waiting there for 10, 15 minutes, and then we were, they started ringing the bells, and we were off. And the sun just started coming up right around then. So, and my whole, it was 55 degrees. It was perfect for running, absolutely perfect. And my plan was, like everyone says, don't go fast out of the gate. Just, I had a plan in mind. I'm like, you know what, I plan on running a 9-minute mile for the duration of the race. I'm like, it's all right to go out just over a 9-minute pace. Just take it easy. Get your legs loose. So what did I run? I think I ran, what? It's like a 9:06. That was perfect. The next 15 miles, I ran an average pace of 8:50. Like, just didn't, John, I didn't miss a beat. And
Clockwork. Well, I ran the 1 mile with you, and it was it was right about it was the turning point where the half marathoners and the marathoners split. And I met up with you maybe a quarter, half a mile before that happened. And I walked backwards, so I was witnessing everyone, hey, go left for the marathon, right for the half marathon. It reminded me, because when I did my first half, the same thing. I thought, how could you run another half marathon? So we met. You were talking normal. You were at like mile 11, and I'm like, he's in good shape. So we talked about your nutrition, your water, and then I ran a mile with you, got you some extra water, and I didn't see the rest of the race because we couldn't really drive over there because everything was blocked off. But when we left, you had your 24, or I'm sorry, yeah, about 15 more miles right around there. So talk about towards the end of the race, because you were clicking. You said 850s under 9, and then you still ran every mile was still in the 9s the entire race. Yeah.
yeah, right after that, I met you and you ran with me for that mile. I was feeling really, really strong. And that's the part where we finally got out of the city and we went into the park. There was a national park right there, and it was actually part of the Buckeye Trail, I believe. So it was like that crushed stone, and we were on that for 4 miles, and it was probably my favorite part of the run. You're finally, it's trail running, and I loved it. So we were, like I said, we did that for about 4 miles in there. And then I think the race began at that point. Mile 19, they had a hill that was, I mean, you could run it if you had the endurance and, strength training for it. But I actually walked that hill. It was ridiculous. So I got up that hill, and it was right around mile 20. And after that, it was up and down. It was hilly the rest of the way. And I was really strong. And then mile 23 hit, and my legs started, I felt some cramping in both hamstrings. And at that point, I knew I needed something. So someone had a banana. I grabbed a banana. And by the way, everyone in those neighborhoods, all the volunteers and everyone who organized that race, hands down to them, and my hat goes off to them, because they did a wonderful job. But I was grabbing snow cones, just something to get a little sugar in, because I actually ran out of salt tabs and I didn't have any honey stingers left. So I knew I was in a bit of a bind there, because I had, 3-4 miles to go. And I was just pushing through it. I knew the pain was going to be there. my biggest thing is I didn't really want to stop. I just wanted to hydrate and keep going. And then mile 26, John, finally happened. And my leg cramped up and seized up. So I actually had to stop and stretch my leg for 30 seconds. There's literally, oh, I don't know, a quarter mile left of the race. So after I met with you for that mile run, we actually left the city and we went into the park. I think it was actually the Buckeye Trail, their national park right there. Well, it was about 4 or 5 mile stretch, and it was my favorite part of the run. That just it's trail running. You get that solitude, and real quick, as part of my training, I opted not to do any earbuds, anything in my ears, because I wanted that. I wanted that headspace. I wanted to detach from phones. You know, it was my time for critical thinking and just being at peace. And I love that aspect of it. So going back to that, it was a good 4 or 5 miles on that little towpath stretch. And then we got to mile 19 where, the race actually started then. They had a huge hill. Everything was uphill. There was at least, 500 feet elevation change on that one. It was a hill where, I mean, I walked it because I wanted to conserve energy, but if you ran that, it would it would destroy you. I mean, if you have the endurance and the strength, I mean, hats out to you, good for you. But and after that, mile 19, it was all hilly, but it was through an awesome neighborhood. But I noticed at mile 23, my legs started cramping up. I was starting to get some pain in my lower legs, calves. And this is where going back to the fueling, I was out of supplements. I didn't have any honey stingers. I didn't have any salt tabs. And all I had was just straight water. I didn't have any tailwind. So luckily, I saw someone who had a half a banana. I grabbed that and ate that really quick because I didn't want to cramp, and I knew potassium would, hopefully get me through. So my biggest thing, I didn't want to stop at that point. I hydrated. I would stop and rest for a little bit, but I wanted to keep moving. Yeah, it was going to be painful, but hey, in my head, that's pain cave, right? Just the way it is. You just got to go do it. And then it was mile 26 I reached, and I was excited. At that point, I'm just like, you did it. You accomplished a lot here. Not many people do this, and I was proud of myself for doing it. But at that point, my leg cramped up. I had to stop. I had to stretch for 30 seconds. It literally cramped up pretty bad, and it was, I bad enough where I couldn't run anymore. But I took a 30-second pause. I stretched it out, and then I kept running. And then there was one last bend. I think there was a quarter mile left. That was it. And it was home free from there. And I even think my last mile was under 10 minutes. 10 minutes a mile. I think it was, and I was like, after stopping for 30 seconds too, I'm like, geez, oh man. So I have to be happy with that. I crossed the finish line. This guy right next to me, he crossed too, and we just looked at each other, did a little fist bump, because you know what you just did. And not too many people do that. And it was, I don't know, it was just a rush, a great feeling. And not even 50 feet past, I see my wife and my daughter and my son, and they were waiting for me. And it was just an overall great experience and feeling. I gave them all hugs and kisses, and it was, I was so happy they could actually be down there and witness that and see that. And you guys were there for the whole front half of it and supporting me and giving me nutrients. Like overall, hands down, would I do it again? Hell yeah, I would do it again.
And more and more. So, I mean, it's a great experience, and no one really knows this unless you follow me closely. But when I did my first marathon, James ran the last lap with me, which was a little over 6 miles. And it means a lot when your family's there because they know not the depth of the work you put in, but they know that you did a lot of training to get there. And crossing that finish line is more than just a physical barrier. It's a mental barrier. It's a euphoric state where you feel like you're on top of the world. And like I said, you became a one percenter that day. So I'm so damn proud of you for what you've done. You led the charge, you and Rachel, for you began running first races. And even Todd, he was the first one to run a marathon in college. We forget that. But we're all trying to strive to be better, not only physically but mentally and with our character. And to be disciplined teaches you a lot about how to become better in all areas of your life. Do you agree with that?
Right. You, oh yeah, you strive for personal excellence. We should all strive for that. So, and this is one aspect of my life, and this is the physical part and mental part. I mean, it captivated a lot, and it was one step at a time. And me and you always talk about this. You stack these runs, you stack these wins, these victories. Even if you have a bad day or a setback, you keep stacking these, you're going to succeed in life, in all areas of your life. So it was a great experience. And for what I have planned in the future, I plan on doing another marathon, but this one will be um, a trail run. I'm going to do a trail one, and then I'll probably do an ultra trail because I just love trail running. Who knows? I might be there right next to you on one of these trail runs. So it's probably going to happen. But
And that's what it is about the rush of the excellence and stepping stones and learning from your failures is that you're striving to just become a better man or woman in the process and journey of life. So what James is saying is like, okay, you ran a marathon. That's in the past now. That's in the cookie jar, as David Goggins would say. Now, what are you going to do moving forward? And you're not only, if you do this the right way with balance, you're imitating to everyone around you the discipline of waking up, diet, health, nutrition, all that, and showing people how hard work pays off. And then you bring that into your place of work, you bring it into your relationship at home, and people gravitate towards individuals who have a vision. And James, you finishing that race and looking onto another race in the horizon here soon, is people love that. You can't be obsessed about it. There's a line, but people do cherish that. Some people on the opposite end will think of it as jealousy. It's like, oh, he's running a lot and he's doing this. You know what? There's always going to be haters, but in your heart that you're feeling better as an individual and striving to become better in life. That's what it's about. The experience. The next Everest is what I always like to chase. The next big thing to just maximize who you are.
right. And real quick, when you were talking about putting stuff into that cookie jar, those deposits. Well, guess what? Those are experiences that you've had, and you can tap back into those because when something gets hard, you're like, well, wait a second, I've already experienced this. I know how to get through it. I know I could do this, this, and this, and they're ways to make you better.
Yeah, 100%. So, James, I appreciate your time tonight, taking time out of your day and just recapping the 1% day that you had, as Ed Milet would say, just become the power of one more. And that day really is a day you'll never forget because of what you did and the family you had around you, because that's the special part. Is it doing it alone's one thing, but being around people who love and support you is just a whole nother level. And I just hope everyone has that experience that we both did. So awesome job, man. Proud of you.
Yeah. Well, hey, I appreciate you having me on, and I really enjoyed discussing this and going through like this. It was a journey for me, so I'm glad I can share it. And for all your listeners, um, this is a good man. Please go out and get his book, Freedom to Ascend, because it's good. Um,
Or you can listen to it on audio for free on the John Grdina Classroom. I appreciate it, James.
it's full of plenty. Yeah, no, it's full of plenty of his life experiences and what he's learned from them, and it's an excellent source. So please go read it. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being a guest. I think the other times you've been on here is the Christmas episode and the 40-day birthday run, and it was just nice to have a one-on-one sitting with something you did that was a Mount Everest accomplishment that you did. So proud of you. Love you, man. I'm thankful for all the things you're going to do in the future as well.
Well, I appreciate it. Right back at you. Love you too.
All right, James, signing off on the John Gardina Classroom. This class is dismissed.